Bonjour! Welcome back to Spooky Stitches. My name is Sheena Peril, host from the Pacific Northwest, and on this channel we talk about making things, whether it is with yarn, fabric, or words. And today we have a regular podcast episode where I show you what I'm making, what I'm working on, and we maybe talk about some books and TV at the end. It is already technically the second half of January. I think today's the 17th. Yes, it is the 17th. I took the first 2 weeks of January off from filming. I worked on a project just for the fun of it, which I'll show you later. But I also put out 4 videos between December 20th and January 1st or 2nd. So I was kind of wiped out. I needed to take a break, and I chilled out. I work in academia, so I was working from home the last 2 weeks of December and into the first week of January. So I just took that time to relax. I did do a lot of holiday knitting. A lot of it was last minute, and a lot of it is gone now. So I will show you some photographs, but I don't actually have any of the items anymore. Okay, there we go. My camera battery was dying and I couldn't figure out why my screen just went really dark on me. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to do a quick what I'm wearing, because even though I didn't make it, it is related. And then we'll go into what I wore, because I went for a job interview in Seattle yesterday and I did wear some hand knits. So let me back up real quick and show you this shirt. So this was a Christmas gift from my brother-in-law. It is a black cat sewing machine. The Japanese characters on the body do actually say black cat sewing machine according to Google Translate. So it's not one of those where it says random things in another language. I don't know where he got it from, but I love it. The one thing, I am not a real big fan of crew necks, so I'm thinking about cutting out this collar, making it a V-neck, and then crocheting or knitting a collar onto it, and then potentially altering the sleeves to match. I haven't decided yet. This is a really good thick cotton, so I kind of don't want to cut into it yet. But I do think it would be nice to change out the collar and just make it look a little bit more handmade, so it's thematic. So what I wore yesterday, I took the train to downtown Seattle, which is about an hour and a half. Well, actually, the train ride itself was more like 30 or 40 minutes, but we also had to take a bus to get where we were going and stuff. But there was a lot of walking involved because we were taking public transit. And if you are unfamiliar with Seattle, there's a whole lot of hills and elevation changes within the city. It's extremely walkable, but you do have to be prepared for the hills. Best you have to do that. So I knew going into it that I would probably be cold waiting for transit, but I would also probably be warm on transit and while I was walking. The other thing is that I am prone to asthma, lung issues. I had bronchitis twice between October 2024 and May 2025. So I am really prone to that. So I wanted to make sure that I had layers and was staying warm, but also had options if I got hot. So, of course, now Bast is laying on what I was going to show you. I'm sorry, buddy. So first of all, we have this. So this is a really old make that you have not seen before. I made this vest probably 10 years ago, and I made it right before I got sick. So if you haven't been around here that long, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and then I started getting really sick. No one could tell me why. And it turns out that the reason I was so sick for 7 years was because of a medication that I was on. So I made this right before, well, it wasn't right before, it was probably 3 years before I got my Hashimoto's diagnosis. But it was in the time before the ACA, so I couldn't afford to go to the doctor. And I wasn't really having the symptoms yet. Like, I was gaining weight, but I wasn't having the symptoms that went along with it yet. Couldn't figure out why. So I made this vest, got to wear it like 2 or 3 times, and then it didn't fit anymore. And I love this so much. It's so pretty. I designed a pattern for it, and I just didn't have the heart to give it away or sell it or anything. I love it so much. It's got corrugated ribbing, so 2-color ribbing. The black is, I believe, Knit Picks Comfy Fingering, and then the tealy color was a cone yarn of like leftover commercial mill ends that I got ages and ages ago. I absolutely love this yarn. It's so pretty. So I wore this. I don't keep a lot of button-down shirts in my closet because I find them uncomfortable. The 2 that I do have are both sleeveless or very, very short sleeve, like cap sleeve. And then I also wore a commercial sweater as like a coat, which I think you can see it back there. It's the bat sweater, which I wear all the time. I've worn it on the podcast before. And then I also wore this just to make sure that my neck and chest stayed warm. I don't remember what pattern this is or anything. It's on my Ravelry. And I believe this is a discontinued Knit Picks Stroll colorway. I could be wrong about that. And then the other thing that I wore is my only finished object that I have in person to show you, which is the socks that I made while I was on my break. And that is these. These are the Mint Tea socks by Debbie Ford. I absolutely love the pattern. I did alter it slightly in that I did not continue the lace pattern down the foot, as you can see, and that's just my own preference. I don't like a lot of texture on the feet of my socks. And I especially don't like lace and having holes on my feet. So I just made the foot plain stockinette. If I were going to make these again, so the pattern is written for 64 stitches. I normally make my socks for myself 60 stitches, and the cuff came out great. That was 64 stitches. I did not do the twisted rib because I found that it was too tight when I did it before, even at 64 stitches. Even though I was thinking I should go smaller, I went ahead and left it because the lace pattern, and I wasn't sure how that was going to behave, if it was going to make it tighter. But if I was going to do this again, fast, what are you doing? If I was going to make these again, I would alter the pattern to just be 60 stitches instead of 64 because they are a bit loose, especially in the heel area. So either making it 60 stitches or just switching to a short row heel so I wouldn't have so much bagginess there. The yarn that I used is Farmer's Daughter's Fibers. Let me get my notebook here. I set up this notebook in a previous episode, I think my last episode actually. So, okay, I did look to try and find what yarn this was. And I think I have it entered in Ravelry, but I didn't write it down here. I think it was like her smooshy base is what I think it is. It's 100% superwash, so there's no nylon in it. And that's the one that I thought sounded the closest. This was part of a special edition series that she did for the Starlight Knitting Society, which is a shop in Portland, Oregon that I went to see in 2024. And the colorway was called Cancer. I am a Cancer. That is one of my favorite colors on the planet. So yeah, I had to snap this up. However, now that I've made socks out of them, I'm very sad because can you see how much wear it has on the sole? So I'm really disappointed about that. To be fair, I do need to wash these. Okay, I wore them yesterday. I have not washed them yet. They were never blocked. So I'm hoping that that will help a little bit. But I don't know. They're also already pilling pretty bad. Like I've got this right here. So I'm really disappointed in that. I do love the yarn and I think I might make another pair of socks out of it. However, I think I will use a different yarn that does have nylon in it for the heel, the sole of the foot, and the toe. This was also, I'm trying in the new year to time my knitting. I have not timed the second sock yet, but the first sock took me about 9 hours and 9 minutes. I'm assuming the second sock took roughly the same amount of time. But let me calculate this real quick and I will get back to you. Okay, the sun really came out. Let me adjust my light. Okay, we're dealing with natural light. We're just gonna have to go with it. I had to pull up a special calculator online because that was way too much math for me to handle. And that came to 15 hours, 46 minutes, and 8 seconds total for a pair of socks. So the second one did go significantly faster by about 3-ish hours, or I guess closer to 2 hours. It was a total of 18 knitting sessions. They were all mostly around like 45 minutes apiece. So if you enjoy those stats, yeah, so I started those on January 1st and finished them on the 16th. So yeah, just yesterday I finished them early in the morning and then wore them because I was too excited, and also they were sitting right next to me when I was getting dressed, so I went ahead and grabbed them. So those are the mint tea socks, and that is the only finished object that I can actually show you. The rest of these are in my Ravelry, but 2 of them don't have finished photos because I ran out of time. So first, let's talk about the Cthulhu Sweater. This was a self-drafted pattern that is based off of what I call my dad's job shirt. Well, that's what he calls it, which is a specific style of quarter zip pullover sweatshirt that he had from work. And I have made him one of these before, and then I was making one for my father-in-law. This one was in gray Cascade 220. I think the color was called Slate. And then the green Cthulhus at the bottom are in, I believe the colorway is called Shire. I did accidentally purchase the non-superwash version of this yarn, which is unfortunate, especially because my father-in-law has discovered he has a wool allergy, which I found out at Thanksgiving. I've been working on this sweater for 2 years. He was absolutely flabbergasted though when he opened it. He really seemed to like it. I show more of the making of this over on my side channel where I do individual project vlogs rather than like whole compilations like the podcast. And so this was self-drafted. It had the color work like octopus Cthulhu things at the bottom. And originally I was going to add more of those around the neckline and at the cuffs, but I just ran out of time. I was also going to embroider eyes and like a little gem in between each Cthulhu where their tentacles kind of met. I just didn't have time. I enlisted my mom to help me with weaving in ends so that I could work on my mother-in-law's project, and then I steam blocked it because there wasn't time to wet block it. I did do a quarter zip on it, which is with a vintage metal zipper that I got from an antique store. I got like a box of zippers from an antique store several years ago. And then I steeked down the collar, put in the zipper, finished it with some satin ribbon to make it nice and soft, and to help it hold up better and have a nicer finish. It can be worn zipped up, but I also intended it for it to be opened up and laid flat. It's a men's size 2X, but I also added extra length to the body because my father-in-law has a really long torso. So I did take some video of me wearing it right after I finished it. I hadn't even woven in the ends yet, and it looks like a dress. Like, I look like I'm wearing one of the inflatable noodle men tubes from like car dealerships, because the sleeves are about a foot too long for me and the body is so big. These were knit on size 7 needles, circular needles. I ended up using I used the Knit Picks interchangeables for this. I started out with the Leica, and because this is not a superwash wool, it was sticking to my Leica needles, and I really didn't like the texture of it on the wood, so I switched over to metal and it went a lot faster. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that sweater. I've said so much about it. It's been in so many videos the last 3 months. I was so sick of that sweater and so glad to get it done. And I am so glad that the recipient really likes it. The second one that I finished, I unfortunately do not have any finished photos of because, again, I just ran out of time. I finished this at like 9 p.m. on December 23rd, and we were meeting my in-laws at 4 p.m. on the 24th. And it's a good thing that I still had a few hours left because I finished it, got all the ends woven in. My mom helped me weave in the ends so that it would be done on time. I put it in the gift bag, put the gift bag with the other gifts by the door, and Morgan immediately climbed into the bag and peed on it. It hadn't even been done for 5 minutes. I was so pissed off. I could have murdered that cat. I wanted to turn her into a muff. I was so angry. But thankfully I caught it in time. It was only a small area that she got, so I immediately took it into the bathroom, rinsed off like that area and around it, and then laid it out to dry, and it was dry by the time we went to my in-laws the next day. But yeah, Morgan and I have a battle of wills. She is very territorial and I am not her human, and this causes a lot of issues between us. So the other things that I made were all for my co-workers. I have a really great group of faculty that I work with. I did not make something for all of my faculty members because I support about 20 to 30 depending on the quarter, and I just made stuff for the people who have offices in my building that I see every single day. So the first thing that I made 2 triangle scarves, and I wanted them both to be a little bit bigger, but again, I was running out of materials. So the first one is made out of scraps, and it is a like dark bluey teal color, and it's 2 rows of that with 2 rows of another random, I think I was using pinks as my contrast. So it'd be 2 rows of teal, 2 rows of a pinky color, and I just went through a whole bunch of scrap yarns for that. There's probably a total of at least 15 different yarns in there. I couldn't tell you which one is which. And it made a small triangle, like neckerchief type scarf. It's not big enough to wear like the brown and aqua one I was wearing yesterday, but it could go around with like a loose knot in the back and be tucked into a coat, or you could wear it on the side with a brooch, which is how I intended to wear it. And I gave it to this specific coworker because while I was working on it, she walked past in this gorgeous teal and brown coat, and it matched her coat exactly. So I knew I had to give it to her. I was also struggling with what exactly to make her because I don't usually see her in like hats or cowls or anything like that. So I thought that this was just perfect. It matches her coat exactly. The second one that I made is in black and dark green, and it is, I believe it's Nitpicks Brava, which is acrylic. Oh, the triangle scarf, it's all garter stitch with some eyelet rows. It's not based on any pattern or anything. It's just my usual triangle scarf recipe. And that one is mostly sock yarn leftovers. The second one that I made is all acrylic. It's worsted weight. The green yarn that I used is Ivy, and then the black is just black. And it's actually two different black yarns, but they were very close in shade and texture. So I went ahead and used them. I don't know what one of them was. The other one is Nitpicks. And again, I think it's like Brava, or I think Mighty Stitch is the other one. It's one of those two. And I used those. And again, it's just the same basic triangle scarf recipe. And I just changed up where I did the eyelets, how many eyelets I did, how many stripes of the different colors, but it's still just a straight up garter stitch triangle scarf. And again, it's small, so it is meant to be worn either under a coat or with a brooch or something. And this particular faculty member also likes to make jewelry, so I thought that was perfect for her because it fits with her aesthetic, but it's also a way that she could show off some of her jewelry. And that light is really bright right now. We have not seen a whole lot of sun lately here in Seattle area. Let me close this curtain. Okay, that's a bit better. I was trying to work with the natural light and I was getting blinded. So the next 4 things I made were all hats. 3 of them use the same pattern. Okay, so the pattern is called B185 Mock Cable Hat and Knits by the Plymouth Yarn Design Company. It's a super easy mock cable hat. I believe you start out with a size 5 and then switch to a size 7 for the mock cables. I could have that reversed. The first one I made was in dark green in that same Ivy color, which is Mighty Stitch. And that one I made for my male coworker, and I just used a size 7 needle all the way through. He absolutely loves it. He walks to work every day because he lives right near campus, and he said that it is so comfortable. It's been so warm, and he adores it. I really love the way that one came out, and the color on it is really great. I'm very, very picky about my greens, and that one was a really nice green. The second one that I did was also Nitpicks. It's in the Comfy Worsted in the color Celestial, and that one was for a female co-worker. So I knit that one in size 5 all the way through, and that one came out kind of dense. It does fit her really well, and it's a good color, but it was kind of hard on my hands because the Comfy is a cotton acrylic, and it just didn't have the give that the Mighty Stitch did. So it was harder on my hands to work on. And I think it used a skein and a half of the Comfy. But it came out really, really nice. And then the third one, I don't know what yarn I used. I had wound it up for a project years ago and ended up not using it, and I lost the ball band. But it's in, it looks grayish in the photos, but it is kind of a watered down purple. It does have a lot of gray in it, but the darker spots are a muted purple. And that one I used the size 7 all the way through. That was for another female coworker, but she has like very poofy hair, so I was trying to take that into account. And that one also, I just really love that pattern. I'm so pleased with it, and I'll definitely be making it again. I mean, I made it 3 times in very quick succession, so I did get a little bit sick of it, but it's a really good pattern, and it's also free. And then the last one I made is actually based off of one of my patterns. It is called the Pumpkin Head. You can find it on Ravelry in my Ko-Fi or download directly from the website. And that one is also in Knit Picks Comfy Worsted. It's in the color Copper, which is a really nice orange shade. And you start out going garter stitch along the brim, and then you pick up stitches to do the cable pattern for the hat. It's a slouchy sort of beret style, and then it has a couple of buttons on the band right here. And I used some green vintage buttons for these. And then this coworker is really funny. She showed up in the fall and was wearing this very blousy orange shirt, and she had a green scarf on and brown pants. And I looked at her, and without thinking, I said, "Oh, you look like a pumpkin." Thankfully, she was not offended by that. It was her intention. But I knew that I had to make her the pumpkin head hat after that. And I gave her the hat, and I told her what the name of the pattern was. And I said, you know, I was so tempted to add a stem to the top where you close in the stitches. And she's like, "Oh, that would be amazing. Can you do that?" So I brought it home, and unfortunately I don't have pictures of this either. But I made a detachable stem and leaf that go on top of it. And I wanted to attach it with a button, but where I drew in the stitches, it's too tight for that, and I really didn't want to undo that join. So what I did is I made a loop, and you just stick a bobby pin through it, and that holds it in place. And it's slouchy enough that the bobby pin shouldn't really get caught in your hair, especially she has very short hair. So it's very cute. And it actually inspired me to expand the pumpkin head pattern. So it currently has a hat and a cowl, and it has instructions for doing it in one color or two colors. And I think I'm going to add a pair of mitts as well as instructions for the stem to add to the top and how to make it removable. So those are, that's coming in the future though. That's going to be a future project. Probably in the next couple of weeks, but not right now. I do have one other finished object to show you pictures of, which is currently living in my office. When I first learned how to crochet, I was 8 years old, and one of the reasons I wanted to learn was because my mom mentioned that she wanted more crocheted snowflakes for her Christmas tree. And I failed miserably and repeatedly at making snowflakes between the time I was 8 and when I learned how to knit, because I could no longer crochet because of an RSI. So I kind of forgot about it after that. Just life happened. As an adult, we don't really decorate for Christmas, so I just didn't think about it. Well, I've been decorating my desk at work for the different seasons. And I'm like, you know, it'd be really great to have snowflakes to hang for January. That way I have something for winter that isn't holiday related. So I made myself some snowflakes out of some scrap blue yarn that I had. I have very little white yarn. I think I might be able to get 1 or 2 more snowflakes out of the white, and that's it. And I used 2 different patterns for those. So the first one is called Snowflake Wishes 2 by Joanna Gate. And this one makes a rather large snowflake, and I really liked the shape on this one. The first time I made each of them, they were a little bit hard to follow, but then once I got into the second and third snowflake, it was much easier. I also made a couple of these for my coworkers. And then the other one I used was called Snowflake Mykonos. And the Snowflake Mykonos makes a much more snowflakey snowflake. Like, it has the jagged edge around the different points. Snowflake Mykonos makes more of a star shape, but it's a very easy starting point if you have never made a snowflake before, and you can make it more snowflakey depending on how you block it. If you stretch out some of the chain stitches at the base of each point, then you can make it look more snowflakey. I don't know how else to describe it. So I made 6 of those for my office. I also made 2 for a coworker and 2 for my mom. I've got a little bit more of that yarn left, and I might make some more of it later, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I've got a couple of other office knitting projects that I'm working on, which I'm not going to talk about here because I don't have them. They live in my workplace, and I will show them to you once they are finished objects. But speaking of works in progress, let's take a look at what I am carrying over from 2025. I do have a sewing project that I am not going to pull out. Actually, I have 2 sewing projects, but I'm not going to pull them out because they're in pieces, and I'm not going to mess with them. So the first one is the Eleonora sock. I've got a few more inches of ankle to do, and then the heel and foot, etc. But I put this on hold so that I could work on holiday gifts. That is probably going to be the next project that I pick up and work on. And that is in Knit Picks Gloss Fingering. I've talked about this so many times and I can never remember what the red color is, but either way I think it's discontinued, so it doesn't matter. But I do have the color details and everything in Ravelry, and if I find the information I'll put it in the description. The other carryover yarn project that I have is this blanket. This is a cat stitch afghan that I am making for my spouse to replace one that her great grandmother made for her that our cat Loki ate several years ago. It took me forever to figure out the pattern for this stitch, and then I randomly stumbled across 4 tutorials for the stitch in a week a few years ago. So I bought the yarn. This is all Joanne yarn. I bought 8 skeins of the light purple and 8 skeins of the dark purple, and that's gonna have to be enough because I can't get more of it. But this is the Big Twist Value, I think. Yeah, Big Twist Value. The light purple is called Lilac, and the dark purple is called Grape. I am not timing myself on this project or on the Eleonora sock just because they're already over halfway done, and I do need to have projects that I am not timing myself on for the sake of my sanity. I'm also not timing how long I spend on my projects at work just because I get interrupted so much, and I don't want to be like turning my timer on and off constantly because I will forget. So I'm not timing any of those projects. And this is just a straight up afghan. It is coming along quite well. There was a little bit of a learning curve, so the bottom of it is a little bit tighter than the top, but it's fine. I cannot get it all in frame, but when I hold it up at shoulder height, it goes down to my ankle. So I've got probably another foot or 2 to go on it. I still have about 2.5 skeins left of each color. And I am planning on putting a border around it just to help cover up some of my sins. And I'm working on this in a 5mm hook that happily matches the yarn I'm working on, even though that was not intentional. So those are the 2 carryover projects from 2025, and my 2 new cast-ons that I'm working on. Somebody needs a cuddle, or are you just using me as a bridge? Do you want a lap or a bridge? Make up your mind, please. Okay, there it goes. Okay, so this one is also an afghan, and this is a weighted blanket. I have a weighted blanket. I absolutely love it. It's a bamboo rayon that is filled with glass beads, and I really love it, but it is not meant for the amount of washing it needs in a household with 5 cats. So it's gotten to the point now where it's about 5 or 6 years old, and it's developing some holes, which I have patched, but it's still leaking beads every time I wash it. So I'm looking to use that one more in the summer because the bamboo rayon does make it cooling, and I can use it even when it's hot out, as long as it's not like 90 degrees when I go to bed. But this one, I forgot to put my stitch marker. This is just leftover yarns, and I'm adding pony beads for the extra weight. These are just bags of black pony beads. I got 500 for $2 at Walmart, and I have probably 12 more bags that I can use of this. And I'm doing double crochet. It's 3 rows with beads, 1 row without. I'm just continuing that. I'm using worsted weight yarn held double. I'm not being very particular about the fiber content because most of my worsted weight yarn is acrylic or an acrylic blend. Now, normally I would be using something like the 5mm hook for worsted. However, I needed a hook that would fit through the pony beads, which means that I am using worsted weight held double on a 3.75 hook. It is hard on my hands. I can do 1 row of this at a time, and that's pretty much it. I can do 2 rows if one of them doesn't have beads. So it is quite a chore to work on. But this one sits by the TV, so I can work on it when I'm doing other things, and that way I work a little bit slower and it's easier on my hands. And for that one, I have a color palette, as you guys have probably figured out. So one of the strands is always either a royal or dark blue or black, and then the second strand is whatever color I find. And this whole bag is full of leftovers that I couldn't figure out what to do with. So I'm just going until I run out of yarn. It is roughly the width for a full-size bed. I'm hoping to get it about as long, and I'm shooting for about 18 pounds for the finished one. However, my attempts to do math for this blanket were absolute failures. I was coming up with needing something like 120 skeins of yarn at 50 grams a piece, and like thousands and thousands of bags of beads. I don't know where the math went wrong. I am not a math person. I have dyscalculia, okay? So I am using my tried and true method of designing crochet projects, which is fuck around and find out. So will I have to rip back at some point? Probably. But we're going with it. And my goal was to get both a heavier blanket and a bigger blanket, because the one that I ordered is not even twin size. So it was measured in inches on Amazon when I got it. It's no longer even available on Amazon. But it was in inches, and I'm like, I don't know how many inches this is. It looks like it's the right size. It's fine. And I should have gone up to one of the bigger sizes, but I got the size I could afford. Anyway, so that is coming along. And my deal with myself, because the cat blanket has been in progress for so long, is for every stripe of the weighted blanket I do, or every row, I have to do 1 stripe of the cat blanket, and every stripe is 3 rows. So it's here, please. There we go. So you have 1 row with these drop stitches that are like the paws or the tails, depending on how you look at it. and then you have 2 rows of just cluster stitches, and then it drops down again to make it look like the cat face. So that's what I'm going to be working on after I finish filming. The other project that I just cast on yesterday, I was working on the train, and that is the Winchester anti-possession mittens. These are by Lewinski. You will see that. They're inspired by Supernatural, which is my best friend's favorite show, and she has been asking me for mittens, so I decided to make her these. Originally, they were going to be in black and rainbow. However, I could not find rainbow yarn at a price I wanted in the time frame that I wanted. So I'm using stash yarn, and I'm going with this sort of light. Hi, can we adjust that maybe? Okay, that's better. I'm going with this aqua-y type sock yarn. It is 100% acrylic, just because it's what I had in stash, and all of my other fingering weight yarns that I could have used were mostly dark purple that would not have shown up against the black. The black is just Stroll fingering, my go-to black yarn, and I'm not quite done with the first pattern repeat for the chart. I will say that this pattern, even though it's rated easy-ish on Ravelry, and it's a mitten pattern, there is not a lot of hand-holding in this mitten pattern. If you're looking at just the text instructions, it literally just says knit, start color work, and no instructions on the color work whatsoever. So you have to make sure that you download the version that has the chart. I did make one change, which is, I think she says to do 12 rounds of knit 1 purl 1 ribbing for the cuff, and I went ahead and did 17, and then I did a row of purl and another 17 and did a double fold cuff, because these are going to somebody in Ohio, and I know she's going to be using them for shoveling snow and such, so I wanted to make sure that it had good long thick cuffs for going into her coat sleeve. She does have larger hands, so, and the pattern is only written for one size. The suggestion for sizing up is to change yarns, which I don't have DK weight yarn or sport weight yarn in my stash really. I buy mostly fingering and worsted because I know that my yarns are going to work together that way. Most of the projects that I want to make work best in those 2 weights of yarn. If I have to, I can always hold fingering double and get DK. So, anyway, so I didn't want to use different yarn for this because I would have had to buy yarn if I was going to change the gauge. And I really didn't want to do that, especially for a reason you'll see in a second here. But I think they're going to be warm enough for her, but I am looking at adding a lining to them, but I don't know. I have tried doing lined knitwear before with fleece, and it didn't turn out well. The problem is that the knitting stretches, the fleece really doesn't, so either the fleece doesn't stretch enough for the knitting, or once the knitting shrinks in, you end up with just this wrinkled ball of fleece inside. So I'm not sure how to handle that. I'm hoping that the double thickness from the color work will make it thick enough. The other thing is that she has large hands, so I'm afraid that if I line them with fleece, they're going to end up being too small. So I'm not sure. we'll go ahead and see. Like I said, the pattern is only written for one size, and I've never made it before, so I'm going with the information I have, and we're trying it. If I have to, I will make a second pair and add 2 repeats of the plaid pattern. That way it's big enough for me to add a lining, but I really don't want to do that. So I'm hoping that this will work. I have one more yarny thing before we move on to the lifey stuff, and that is a small acquisition. You understand why I had to have it, right? You understand, right? It's actually showing up a lot bluer on camera. It's really more, I can't, yeah, it's not showing up true color on camera. So what you're seeing as blue is really more aqua. The purple is about right. You showed over here and that a little bit better. Sunlight's just messing with me today. So this is Black Cat Fibers. It is the Nomad sock, which is a 75-25, 463 yards for 100 grams. The colorway is Alexandrite. And when I saw this at the yarn shop, it was like just this little end sticking out. Or actually, I think it was this end. It was just this sticking out on the shelf. It was buried under a bunch of like gray and brown yarn that I didn't really care for. And I saw it from across the room and was like, I need it. I need this in my life. So I went over and snagged it. There was one other skein left. I very easily could have bought both if I'd had the money. And I picked it up and it was like the clouds opened and rainbows came down and hearts floated around me and a string quartet started playing. And I brought it home and I realized that it was Black Cat Fibers, which I love black cats. I have a tattoo of Black Cat. I own 1 3/4 black cats. And then the color is called Alexandrite, which is my birthstone. I'm literally wearing an Alexandrite ring. And this was the same day that I had finished the Cancer Zodiac socks. So I was just like, it's meant to be. They knew I was coming. I cannot say no to this. I probably should have, but I love it. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but it's going to be amazing. And considering I have not bought yarn really in the last 2 years, and this is the first showstopper yarn I've bought in 6 months, I'm not mad at myself for cracking. It's too good. This wasn't just talking to me, it was screaming. It was sending smoke signals, telegrams. It had taken out a billboard and I needed it. So I don't know what it's going to be yet, but it's mine and we're going to be very happy together. Okay, so now seems like a very good time to remind you to interact with this video in some way, as that helps me get viewers and it tells the algorithm that people like what I do, so it shows it to more people. I am really trying to get some kind of passive revenue stream going in 2026 while I look for a new job. And so speaking of that, let's look at some of the other stuff that I have been doing the last few months. So if you saw my last video, I did one all about planning for 2026 and organizing my yarn stash, planning what my makes are going to be, and setting up my new knitting notebook. I I also put out a digital knitting planner that you can download. If you are a member on Ko-Fi, it is free. If you are not, it's $1.99, and it is 11 pages. You can get either the printer-friendly black and white version or the full color version. Buying it once gets you access to both. It's a PDF. You can print it off, and it includes time tracking charts, project pages, stash down goals, all sorts of neat stuff that you can check out. And there's a few sample pages available on the shop listing so that you can take a look at it first. I've also been doing a whole lot of single project vlogs over on the Cozy Shenanigans channel. If you are not familiar with my side channel, that is where we do project solo vlogs, as well as talking about cozy mysteries, TV, books, and just generally having a very relaxed time, except for my run up to Christmas, in which I was obsessively knitting a gray sweater. I've also added a couple of updates to my blog recently, and I am considering starting a true crime podcast in 2026. However, I'm torn on this. So let me know what you think. I actually started this podcast a couple of years ago on Spotify, and I took my season break at the same time that my life fell apart, and at the same time that Spotify made some changes that made it a lot harder for me to use their platform. So if I go back to it, it would be a YouTube podcast. I'm not sure yet if it would be one of those like black screen listening podcasts, or if it would be with photos and stuff, or if it would be like a talking head type of video. I don't know. So if you have opinions, if you are interested on potentially seeing a true crime podcast from me that focuses on missing and murdered Indigenous women, this would not be a comedy type podcast like morbid. This would definitely be a lot more serious and respectful, but with some snark thrown in. Leave a comment down below on what your opinions are. I just want to find out if maybe I'd have any viewers for it. I don't know. Okay, last little section. Let's talk about what I have been watching and reading, because I haven't been playing a whole lot. I'm currently working on a couple of different book club books. I'm reading Dissolution for my book club at work. This is by, I think, C.J. Lewis, and it is a murder mystery set in the reign of Henry VIII. So far, it is really good. I started listening to it before Christmas, and then when I went on break, I stopped listening to it, and then I got back into it, and I was like, what the heck is going on? I remember none of these people. And then I'm also getting ready to start an Octavia Butler book for another book club that I just joined at our local library. It's a book club that's also a knitting group. So looking forward to that. I've only been to one meeting so far, and I had just found out about it like a week before, so I couldn't get the book in time. I'm just gonna hold on to this because it's causing trouble. You wanna say hi? He says no. He's grumpy. He is also burrowing into my neck. You can't really tell, but he's really pressing in there. So I did watch season 5 of Stranger Things. So good. The ending made me cry. But I like the way that Mike wrapped it up. So that it was a lot less sad. Because I hate it when you have a female main character and then she sacrifices herself at the end. Like, that is why I stopped watching Sabrina. Well, that and the fact that every problem that arose was her own making. Okay, we're done. Be good. So, I did really enjoy that. I marathoned both halves of the season, and then I watched the finale when it came out. It's really good. I also really loved Holly's character, and there's kind of a disconnect for me just because of the way the kids have aged. And I know that's because there were so many filming delays. Like, this came out originally during COVID and everything, so things got put off a lot. So, but I loved the story. It was really good. I also watched a series on Tubi, which is called Headless, and it's set up like a movie, like it's one video, but it's actually a TV series, and it's set in the modern day, and it's about this teacher who goes to Sleepy Hollow to work in their middle school, and he ends up with the Headless Horseman as his roommate. It's a really funny comedy, and it has Felicia Day in the final episode. And if you're from here on YouTube, and you remember Ginny D from, if you remember the parody group Not Literally from YouTube, she was one of the founding members of that. And she plays a ghost in the series who is very funny. And I'm sure that there are a couple of other familiar faces in it. I am face blind. I don't pick up on them. But really funny series. I think the whole thing is maybe 2.5 hours. But if you're looking for something that is spooky but not scary, a little bit funny, then go ahead and pick that one up. It's kind of like if the writers of the Gilmore Girls wrote Sleepy Hollow. That's what it feels like. And the other thing that I have been watching is season 5 of Only Murders in the Building. I've just started it. I think I may be 2 episodes in at most. I am holding off on that one because I'm doing a swap with somebody. So I have some fiber coming in soon that I will be spinning, and I usually spin in the living room in front of the living room TV, where I've got a little bit more space. And so I'm holding off watching that until I get that fiber in, because I watched the last 4 seasons while I was spinning, so why not watch the 5th season while I'm spinning? So that is all for me today, and thank you for joining me and talking yarn and fiber and crafty things. I hope to see you again soon, and please like, comment, subscribe. Like I said, interact with my work in any way, and it tells the algorithm that you like it and that other people might too. So until next time, please stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope you have something cute and fluffy to cuddle with, even if it frequently misbehaves. In trouble. In trouble.